Welcome, folks. This is Chris Jansen. I'm here with Marvin from Join the Internet. We're just
Hey,
meeting. We've had a couple email conversations. Thanks so much for joining me today, Marvin. I'm awesome.
dude, thank you for having me. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I don't know if you know, but I've been just like spamming your chat on your End Evil podcast. I'm joining the internet, so I really wanted to be a part because I love the topics you guys are talking about. Your channel just happened to come up because the algorithm is already feeding me things like this. Thankfully, I guess I'll say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the algorithms in general. And so, yeah, I just wanted to reach out because I care about the topics that you talk about. And I'm trying to figure out the best way that I can contribute and, figure out what I can do to participate in all of that good stuff. And so I was kind of thinking this episode would be a little bit of you helping me figure that out. And I have lots of ideas already. So,
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, just the things you described already, um, a lot of help. Hearing that we did manage to reach people, sometimes it feels like it's hard to reach people at all. But the
yeah,
fact that, there was some algorithm out there that brought my work to you, to me, is like pretty exciting and good to hear. And,
yeah,
all the comments I've had on the show, I can't think of anything I've seen that I didn't like. Anybody getting involved and sharing and putting in their 2 cents is helpful. I feel like it's weird how stubborn the world is right now, in a way, with not wanting to do anything and not wanting to be involved with what, to me, seems like the most important thing ever in
yes,
existence, which is figuring
yes.
out what's right and wrong and how do we fit into that. So I guess my first question to you would be, like, what do you see as the most important thing? Does that make sense?
Uh, yeah, well, on our short call yesterday, I mentioned that I have a little surprise that I wanted to show you on camera. So I guess I'll just get that right out of the way. And it's this right here. You definitely know what this is, right? So,
Yeah, the
but
end of
check
all
out the
evil.
title.
La
Look
fin
at
de
the
mal.
title.
Du mal.
Yeah, so it's a French version because that's all that's available on Amazon, and it's 6.95. I also just recently bought and I'll talk about the book a little bit in case there's anyone who watches and doesn't know about it. I watch a lot of Mark Passio, so that's how I even heard about it.
Mhm.
Generally
Me
speaking,
too. Yeah.
but I bought an English copy of this, and it's called La Fin du Mal, The End of All Evil in English. Um, and it's an amazing book. I really, really like it. I haven't finished it yet. I put it on and I'll just listen to it. It's on audiobook. Like it's really easy to find. I know it's on your website too. You have the PDF of it. So definitely downloaded that. I appreciate it. And this is gonna help me get better with French because I kind of know about it. Well, I know a little bit of French, but I'm not that good. But I think this will give me a good reason to work through it and help improve it. But to answer your question, ending evil, brother, it's as simple as that. Doing what we can to shift the dynamic, at least help progress. Like if right now it's 70-30 with 70 evil, 30 moral, then let's see if we can make that 69 31, even like whatever improvement we can make is going to be big, I think. So that's like the most important thing in my opinion. And from the broadest perspective, what I am going to try to be contributing to, as much as I can.
Wow, that's a beautiful answer. I love that. I don't know if you've
Thank
seen, I've had him on the show, Derek
I
Bartoluccelli.
did.
He
Yeah,
does
I saw that episode.
Dissolving the Divide with Leslie. He's
Mhm.
in France, and I'm sure he'd be
I
someone,
really
if you reached out to him, especially if you're part of the natural law community, he'd be happy to help you with some French because he's really good, bilingual in that way.
Yeah, I'm looking for a community and I just haven't I'm out here in Santa Barbara. Maybe I should talk about myself. My name is
Yeah, feel free. Fill us in a little bit on your deal and tell people about your music too. Oh, it looks like we got
um
frozen for a minute there. You're back in action. Go ahead.
oops, I'm back. Okay, cool. Yeah, my name is Marvin. I'm out here in Santa Barbara, California, USA. Um I do have a project called Join the Internet. It's one word. It's primarily music, but I also just kind of use it as a nom de plume, so to speak, for all kinds of different things. Like my project that I want to talk to you about here today, called Easing People into Waking Up, YouTube channel and podcast,
Easing people
and
into waking up?
yeah, yeah, I have a project
Like that.
with that goal and that title, and I'll be excited to talk to you more about that. And so anyway, throughout the years, like I've been into these, like I think 20, I'm just gonna guess 2015 or something, like around the pizza G8 time, when all of that stuff, WikiLeaks and all of that stuff started coming out. I became much more engrossed in that topic. And since that time, I've kind of been under the radar, so to speak, not really talking about these types of topics like, evil conspiracy that the upper echelons of government and those sorts of things. But just over time, and especially after COVID, I've just kind of reached a boiling point where it's just like, when is enough of just different things happening, people getting killed, literally, people being lied to by media, literally, people's critical thinking skills being suppressed, literally, and all of that has just now boiled into a really ugly soup to yield a me who wants to figure out something that can be done about it. So I haven't quite found a community of people like that yet. I will say though, the more I started talking about these topics more like publicly, openly, I am finding that there are people who are a little more like me, that if they've known about these types of things, they just haven't really been talking about them on purpose because it's scary. It's really scary to put yourself out there and just start talking about these kinds of things, and it's not an unfounded fear either. Like people genuinely die because they talk about these topics. So it is really scary, but I've just reached a point where I have to, there's no option, in my opinion. It's like an obligation. Like Mark Passio says, he has a really funny approach. I love Mark Passio a lot, but his approach makes me laugh a lot of times because, I mean, you know why? If anybody watches Mark Passio, you'll know how he gets on his shows. We'll call it passion. He's passionate. We'll say it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I like it a lot. And I think I help rile me up a little bit. So mentally, I take a different approach than Mark Passio with how he talks about things. But hey, the knowledge is the knowledge at the end of the day. So long-winded way of saying, yeah, reaching out to Derek sounds like a good idea. I probably will.
Yeah, it's something I was just talking about today. Actually, I did a little walk and talk for tonight's podcast.
Nice.
Um, for folks listening, we're pre-recording this, and you're going to be hearing it probably 2 weeks after we've recorded this. But
Cool.
on my little walk and talk today, I was kind of talking about, from a personal point of view, my own struggle to some extent, doing this type of work, and then finding the balance of being able to support
Hmm.
doing this type of work. It's difficult, like, not somebody who had a family business already or a particular line of work that was incredibly successful. I've always just kind of worked with labor through most of my life. And in the last few years, trying to learn how to develop more entrepreneurial skills so I can be more independent and less bound to the systems out there. But the way our world is currently, and talk about, that book has such an interesting section on culture. Our culture
Hmm.
is a culture of slavery, and in this slavery culture, we're really bound to a lot of aspects of it: licenses, fees, um,
Taxes.
taxes,
Yep.
taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The big
and
one.
so it gets to be very difficult to extricate ourselves, and people always want to look at the physical world things as like the major pins that we have to knock down, when in truth, the most difficult thing we have to knock down is the pins in our mind, in our mindset, and those also get in the way of relationships. And I think One thing I realized is when I started doing this content creation and putting my podcast out there, um, I started meeting other like minds. And now I have like regular masterminds with
Yes.
people you see on these meetings, on these other podcasts. Like some of the most brilliant minds in my mind are people that have already discovered natural law and then are speaking about it online and not afraid to share who they are. Like even against, despite what you said, we know that this slave culture, the authoritarians in place don't want people like us spreading this message and working together. And so
No.
they're looking for all kinds of ways to keep us divided, fractionalized, fragmented from one another. But what's pretty powerful is when you start speaking out like this, you're going to find friends. And not only friends, but friends
Hmm.
that have principles. And that opens a lot of doors. And I think together we can open a lot of minds and a lot of doors the more we do this network. And so having you here today is a big sign of that, more of that to come.
Amen, brother. That's what I've been finding too, a little bit. So I would say, like at the end of 2022, I could probably even figure out the date if to get super specific. But near the end of 2022 was when I reached the point where I was like, all right, it's time to, it's just time because like I'll tell you about my experiences that led me to what I'm calling my project, easing people into waking up. I just over the years, time and time again, and I know that you've had this too. I know like people who are general in this topic have had this type of thing happen where you'll bring up these types of topics. You'll have like solid points. You know, you might have evidence. You have like just really solid. Let's call it a solid argument. And then what you get back, and this is literally the types of things I would get back, is things like get off the dark web, you know, or oh, I don't care about that, whatever, like I can't do anything about it. Just some version of apathy, dismissal, and ridicule, you know, some version of that. And at times it would take even an aggressive form, like people genuinely becoming like angry that you bring something like this up. And this could be your family, and this could be your friends. And this type of thing just had it just struck me because it's really easy to say something like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm just smarter," but I don't think that's the truth. I really don't think it's as simple as that. Maybe it's a part of it because everyone is different. But I started to figure there has to be something else going on. And what lots and lots of thinking, lots and lots of documenting and researching into all kinds of issues finally had me conclude, and it's the foundation of my project of easing people into waking up, is that really what's happening is there are three things kind of lacking, I find, in people. And I think this lacking has been on purpose. This is a systemic lack of education in these topics. I'm gonna tell them to you now. The first is you've probably heard of it. Have you heard of emotional intelligence? Have you ever think you know
Absolutely.
about it? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. Should we talk about that a little bit before I move on, just so
Yeah,
that
that's
we,
a
in case
big
the
one.
audience has
That's another thing I was
uh,
talking about this morning. So I love that you
great.
brought that up.
Do you want to give like a quick one sentence? Or I can too, but just for the people who are gonna
Yeah,
watch this.
like I would say emotional intelligence is the ability to navigate the waters of emotions between us and people we relate with in a reasonable way so we
Yeah,
can
and it's
relate to others and communicate and build trust.
and the hugest part of that is reconciling the emotions within ourselves. So, so like, let me see what I can add to that. Some people think that being emotionally intelligent means you're able to like hide your emotions, for example, and it means that you're able to like suppress them or like not show them. And actually, that is emotionally unintelligent. When you're emotionally intelligent, what you're able to do is have your emotions and experience them and use them as a tool. You know, the same as your thoughts. It's another part of your tool set because our intuition, our emotions they give us clues. They really, really do. If you find something enjoyable, like, that's a clue. If you find something uncomfortable, that's a clue. And what people tend to do when they get these clues, when they're not emotionally intelligent, is they react. They'll just give in to whatever that immediate instinct is. And the output of that is someone might yell, for example, or someone might, like, gosh, what's that called? The fight or flight, like, get emotionally hijacked. So emotional intelligence, like, really helps you start to understand that dynamic within you, um, through lots of self exploration. And it's hard, it's not easy, but confronting your own biases and your own traumas, blah, 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 blah. Being willing to do that, and being willing to do that honestly, those are things that I found increase emotional intelligence. And I'll just tell you, I find it super lacking across the board. Like, just walk out, go to the grocery store, and you'll see it. Go to the post, you'll see it. You'll see it.
Yeah, when the
You'll see
grocery
it.
store runs out of toilet paper for a week, you really see people's lack of emotional intelligence shining through, right?
Exactly. It's different things too. So the second one, then I'll move on from that one. So that's like the first thing that I find just lacking is emotional intelligence. The second is what I call hyper self awareness. So it's very similar to emotional intelligence, but it's a nuanced difference. Hyper self-awareness to me is about that ability to, like, step outside of yourself and look at a situation from the outside in. And that means being willing to look at your own role, and look at your own behaviors and do your best to see your own blind spots. Because very often, without self-awareness, we might say things that offend people unintentionally. We might um be offended by someone else's behaviors when they did not have any intention. And so, in that sense, self awareness lets you, again, like, take that step outside of yourself and look at a situation. And that'll segue into the third one, with this last one here that's lacking, critical thinking. Which maybe you can have you heard critical thinking, about critical thinking, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And we often talk about the trivium as a way to, some
Yeah, I've heard
structure
about.
to do critical thinking. And I think it's a really good structure, an ancient structure that works really well.
Yeah, and critical thinking, what I like about it, it's a little bit like math. It's not it's just pure logic and reasoning. So there's not an emotion to critical thinking. It is literally like logic. So if A is B, then B must be A. That has to be true because of the axioms that you started with. So that's
Like a
the
geometry proof, right? You
yep.
start with your given and then you say, well, if given is true, then that means, what can we
This must
conclude
be true.
based on,
Yeah, and this must not be true by
right?
comparison, and those sorts of things. So all to say, that is now really the foundation of what I decided back in 2022 that I'm going to try to promote and increase in the world as much as I can, hopefully. The idea is this simple. If right now, when these topics are brought up and talked about, people are apathetic to them, people are ridiculing them, people are just plain ignoring them, then I think what is happening is these people they do not possess the emotional intelligence, the self awareness, and the critical thinking to receive information. And so I'll be curious to see what happens when these three pivotal things improve. And my bet is will happen is more people will be ready to receive the information. More people will be ready to go, oh shit, I can see now how this is not only possible, but it is literally happening. These are things that are literal. Governments are actually, killing the leaders of a country. Government literally does own me, Marvin, as a citizen, and it's a literal slavery. It's not like a metaphor. It's literal. We are owned. It's true. And it's a hard thing to accept. It's like really hard to
Yeah.
accept that. I think it's going to take something like that to ultimately do it. You know what I mean? So that's the
I really like how you broke down those three things that are holding people back, because I really agree with your observations. Especially like the one that really stuck out for me is that hyper focused on themselves aspect. Like
yeah,
Mark
hyper
gets
self
into
awareness. Yeah,
solipsism, and I've talked about the narcissists and the moral relativists, right? Those are all words, but there's a
mm,
spectrum of people, and many of us tend to like slip into these different roles because um, society grows these molds. Society creates our culture,
100%.
wants us to slip into these molds of just kind of judging people and stereotypes, and these are the things that fit in society and these are the things that don't, and if you talk about something that doesn't fit in, then we start putting you in this other category kind of thing. But like even a lot of people I've seen in the alternative health, and people are doing alternative research, still like get this cyclical issue where they're hyper focused on their own
Yeah,
self or their own personal gains, or how's it going to affect me. And whenever we have these conversations with people about, okay, we need to work towards a world without government is literally, like you said, kidnapping, killing, and then behind government, people with the power of government are literally raping and enslaving children in the most terrible, heinous ways you can imagine. This is going on a daily basis, and moment by moment basis. And it's like, how can we disconnect from that? Is people, I think people feel like they have to disconnect from it because it's too much to look at. It's like looking right in the light. It hurts your eyes, to
mm,
look at the real
yeah,
problems. And so people spend most of their lives finding ways to keep themselves blinded from the light of
mm,
the truth, which is that we're here for a reason, that this morality thing, these emotions we're having, they are reality. They're our ability to recognize reality. And the reason we're getting emotional and off-ended is because our consciousness is interpreting right and wrong, and it's recognizing that a lot of places that we're being forced into or pushing ourselves into, our mindset is wrong. And that's causing
mhm,
emotions. So if we ignore those emotions, we're ignoring reality, we're shutting out natural law. And that's why it's such a hard thing for people to recognize and align with, because they've been spending their whole life trying to not look at that bright light, and we're
yeah.
asking them to do the most difficult possible thing that can be done, is to become a human
Well, and just
again.
yeah, just as importantly though is they were also raised to do that. We have been raised to do that. That's been on purpose. It's kind of like that John D. Rockefeller quote. I think he said, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers." So it's all in that statement. Like it really is. There's no reason for a entity like the government to want something different than that, because it knows that if that were to occur, naturally people would realize their own power, and their own abilities and their own capabilities. They would recognize all of those things. And then in that sense, they'd have no other reason to not work together and figure things out between each other instead of having to rely on uh, Big Daddy. So that's the gist of that from my end. I completely agree with what you're saying, and so from this point, starts to become to me like, what is next? And when I think about that, things like feeling compelled to be on here come to my mind, and just start to be just kind of more open. And then this is really all something like this can be for me, for example, as a starting point. Really small starting point, because it will take a lot more to get to where I think people can actually go. I think we can actually get to a place where people more often are now like woken up. It's obviously extremely difficult. If it wasn't, we would see improvements by now. I've heard Mark Passio say, "We're not winning, we're losing." We're losing even more than we have before. I can see that angle of it. I definitely can. I would probably disagree based on my instinct and just kind of what I'm seeing in my day to day life. But at the end of the day, um, one of us will be right, so and one of us will be wrong. I just know things kind of go in ups and downs and ups and downs, and for too long, things have just been going down. That I just think eventually, like it says in the end of all evil, all people are capable of recognizing truth in its purest form. So I think there will be like a point where you just have to like see things for what they are. You can't not do that because unless we actually do get like, I don't know, Neuralink implanted into our brains and now it can actually control us, which that's a whole nother topic. But
Yeah, and that might be right around the corner. But,
yeah,
I agree with you that, what the book is pointing out, the end of all evil, is it is just a matter of time. And, good is the essence of what all is. God, good, that's what this whole thing is, reality, right? So evil is something that's developed inside of it that has grown, but it's just a matter of time till it's extinguished because good is what God is. It is the ultimate thing, like it has to be the thing that's remaining at the end. And so evil will be destroyed and then it'll show up in different ways again. It's just a question for our process being here on this plane of existence. How much of it do we want to be part of? And I think that's where people get stuck often, where we start presenting that, well, if you recognize the world we're in, government is an evil entity. There's nothing good about it. People want to defend it endlessly because to resist it seems scary, like you pointed out.
yes,
And but to resist it is the golden path. It is the more righteous path, even though it's more difficult. So we have to make choices in our life that are some level of sacrifice or being uncomfortable or difficult because it's for the greater good. And people, what they will always inevitably say in these disagreements or arguments is like, yeah, but if we stopped having government, there's going to be all these problems in the meantime. Like, or if I didn't get my money from the government, then I'm going to be poor, And it's like, yeah, we might have to go through some uncomfortable things. That doesn't mean we don't go towards the light. That doesn't mean we don't do the right thing just because it's going to be uncomfortable or our particular lifetime might have some discomfort. That might be part of the game. But
mm,
it's important that we still do the right thing because of principle, not because how it's going to work out for us in the next week or two.
yeah.
So there is a level of hard work and sacrifice that has to happen on that path, right? I mean, it's not going to be
Mm.
easy.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point too about you said evil will come back in a different form. I think that's a good um, point to make because yes, the end of all evil, which by the way, audience, it's a book by Jeremy Locke. I understand that's a pen name. No one knows who the somebody knows, but it's not common knowledge who actually wrote it. Super rare book, but I do recommend it because it breaks down the concept of what's moral and what is evil. And it's actually the best definition of it that I have ever come across because it's very simple. And it even makes that point. Truth is simple. And so evil is defined as, well, actually, maybe I'll start with
Evil's the
what's
destruction of
moral.
freedom. I always
Yeah.
say,
So
right on the show, that's one of his really good definitions. I love that. Go ahead though.
yeah, in the book, it actually starts with the definition of what's moral and what's good, which is the infinite value of the freedom, of the human being. And then evil is defined as the destruction of freedom. So anything that tries to destroy the notion that the human has infinite worth is evil. And as I've kind of tested that against different things, I found that it works, like on a critical thinker level. It makes sense and it works and it helps get you through lots of different morality problems. Like maybe we'll even come up with an exercise and think through different ones. But you do have to accept a premise, and that premise is that the human has infinite worth. If you do not accept that premise, then the rest of it won't resonate with you either. But I have come to accept that premise. I truly believe it, and I have come to accept that premise through lots of different experiences. But the main one, honestly, is simply the fact that I am conscious right now. Just as I've thought through, like, how can that even be? Like, how is it that right now I am having an experience and no one else seems to be having the experience I am? And yet it seems like they are also all having an experience. And we have zero idea, even to this day, after the millennia probably of research and decades of progress in neurology and stuff, zero idea how it is that chemicals firing in our brains and neurons making connections then lead to me tasting my coffee when it touches my tongue, or me seeing you on a screen. Like, where is that happening? Is that in a physical space somewhere? We don't have any idea. We just, like, literally don't. Every the most advanced neuroscientists in this field at some point admit that we just don't know. We just literally don't know. And all of that eventually led me to and again, my own life experiences, how I have grown as a person throughout my life. Experiences with things like psychedelics, for example, and just the level of emotions that you can feel with that, that is different than when you have not taken them, and the types of understandings that end up just kind of coming to you. You don't ask for them, they just end up kind of coming to you. All have led me to be able to accept that premise. But it's not the kind of premise that I think I can. So, this is one where it's difficult to just break that down to here's this research paper. But by the same token, it's similar to how nobody can explain how consciousness actually happens, what leads to someone or something actually having an experience. And it's to the point where people can't even conclude that somebody else is actually having an experience. Like, you can't solidly say that for sure I'm conscious. You can't. Like, you have no way of actually proving that. I have no way of proving that with you. And yet I still believe you are, because I know that I am. So I guess in some
And
ways that was.
we can corroborate. I love that word. I start thinking about that a lot. We can corroborate our experience. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what gives us the ability to be objective. Because if you think about it, people always argue with me about objective reality or objective morality. Like, how can
Sure.
anything be objective when
Right.
everything we do is experiential and relative to our experience? But the fact that we do have this ability, which is really advanced when you think about it, to not
Super.
just be in this body and experience what it's experiencing, but to think about it from an
Mm-hmm.
outside sort of point of view and then communicate with you or someone else about that in a removed manner. We can cognitize, we can think about. It's a pretty amazing, like, levels when you think about who's thinking about the thought, who's observing and
Right.
hearing that thought. It's
Yeah.
like we have layers of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness that are very developed. And how could that not be valuable? That's like the most modern technology the universe has to offer is one of us. That's pretty
And so,
badass.
Chris, I say all of that to build onto your point earlier about how evil would come back in different forms, because you said it differently than how I'm about to say it right now, but you said basically that we have a choice at the end of the day, since we are conscious. Like, I have a choice to do something that is moral or evil. And I know that. So, because I see that every day with the decisions that I have to make in my life. And so, um, like, let me share with you like a conversation that I might have with a friend, for example. And that friend mentions that, well, evil is a part of God. It must be because God is literally everything and nothing if nothing is a thing. And I hear that and I go, that is true. I can believe that. That resonates with me. Like that would, I would have to accept that if I start with um, a God creates everything. So the thing is, though, when that is brought up, it tends to be brought up as a way to justify the status quo, to justify the current state of humanity. Um, and so I always end up making the point that I heard you make and that I would make is that even if you cannot destroy evil itself, we are having an experience right now, and I do have a choice. So at the end of the day, it is up to me on the choices that I make. So even if evil would come back or whatever, or take a in different form, or it can't totally be squandered. What wouldn't change, what should not change, is that the individual consciousness has a choice. So, so I just wanted to add on to that because I think it's a solid point. And it is something that actually comes up with the conversations I have that, well, you can't defeat evil because
Yeah.
evil is part of everything. So,
And I've had to bring up that yin yang thing quite a bit
yep.
because, like, I love that symbol. I have it tattooed right here on my shoulder. But
Really cool.
yeah, to me, from the time I was young, it's a symbol that really makes a lot of sense to me. It
It does.
explains
Balance.
the left and the right, the right and the left brain hemisphere, the male, the female aspects that are within all nature, like hermetic
Mhm.
principles, like there's always polar opposites, there's always this balance. But good and evil, that's one thing if you're looking at it from, like I said, the subjective point of view that we do have the ability to do, which is
Right.
fantastic. But in the context of what's actually going on is we're in a human body, and this human body can do things that could damage other human beings,
Right.
either through our hands actually manipulating or through our minds in
Yep.
some way or form manipulating to take something that's not ours,
Mhm.
that's didn't grow from our skin, it's somebody else's skin. And we have the ability to make a choice to destroy another being or
Yeah.
destroy other life, and that choice is our opportunity to choose the light path, right?
Mhm.
To recognize that you don't have to choose things that are harmful in a way to other things that you wouldn't want harm done to yourself. Like that's the most basic common sense of all reality, that I think we're partly here just to figure that stuff out and to
Mm.
understand the details and intricacies of that situation and explore it. And that doesn't mean every time we make a mistake that, oh, now you're a bad person. It's like, oh, you did something that sucked and you learned from that. You had an emotion that came up that helped you realize that you were getting off course. It's like, you're the surfer on the wave. You can hold your body different, you can balance different, and you can ride that wave in a more efficient manner. But you
Yeah.
can't change the wave. You didn't
Right.
make the ocean. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's a tricky philosophy, and I see why people get hung up in a world that's basically trying to keep people completely focused on the material outcome of things and not to recognize that our choices are what create the physical outcome that we see.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. And I think part of it, like the biggest part of it, like I mentioned, is those three lacking elements. The hyper self awareness, the and it's self awareness. I think self focus might be different. Being aware of oneself does not mean that you are solely focusing on
Right, self-discipline's
oneself.
good.
Yeah, yeah. So like the self awareness, that's a key component. But it's those three things: so critical thinking, self awareness, and emotional intelligence lacking. That I think if they improve, they'll help people be able to ride the wave in the way that you're saying, because they'll be able to actually see the differences in the choices that they make. like I've noticed tremendous differences in how I'm received by others, in the beneficial impacts that I get from just being aware and being like considerate and doing my best to elevate people, not break them down. And so maybe if you don't mind me flowing back into the project that I have a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the music too, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I want to tell you about some of the, I'll call them design elements of this project, because I'm trying to figure out, I don't know, let's call it a messaging strategy. Like I've noticed with these types of topics, and maybe I'll just throw out what I mean by these kinds, like talking about conspiracy theories, or talking about spirituality, or talking about natural law, or talking about, just all of those, that whole family of type of stuff. I tend to see um, like, I'm trying to identify what is it about this topic that makes it difficult for people to, ingest, and, like, how can I make that easier, for people, like the normies or whatever, I guess I'll say. I don't like that term. I wish I could come up with a different one. The general populace.
Yeah.
And so some of the design elements that I have, come to is, one of them is to, like, focus on specific facts, rather than, like, bigger picture. In other words, if I start at like saying there's satanic pedophiles in government, that's really like big punch to somebody. So rather than that, it's like present the actual, whatever it is, Project Mockingbird or Mark Ultra, and then present like actual just components of it, like little pieces of it, rather than that entire thing, because that entire thing is overwhelming. And it's super overwhelming. Like, I think somebody kind of needs to build up into that. Like, they'll get to that. But since it's about easing people into waking up and understanding that you can't force anyone to do something, I think it's more presenting something in front of people, and slowly but surely it will add up over time. So that's one of the design elements. Another one, oh, and with that is that those facts are like validated. So links to sources, links to quotes, links to literally a video of a government person speaking. Just ways of saying this is a fact. This isn't like arguable. This isn't an opinion. It's a literal fact. So that's one of the elements. Another one is no quote unquote scary music or tone. And what I mean by that, I found that a lot of times in these topics, there is an understandable urgency and warning element to it. So it'll be things like, do this before it's too late. These guys are trying to X to you. Just these like scary music, like actual like scary music, like dun dun dun, whatever it is, in the background of this type of content. And all of that is interesting to me, but I have a feeling that it throws people off. It has them feel because it's scary. Like it feels scary to engage with something. It feels threatening. And I don't know anybody who likes to feel threatened. If you know somebody like that, I guess let me know, because I'm
Hmm.
sure science would want to study that person, because no one likes to feel
Well, except for
uncomfortable.
like all the people that love horror movies and stuff.
Yeah, it's
But
it's a
that's
little
because it's
bit,
a
that's true.
distraction from the
Yeah.
light. It's
Hmm.
different than what you're trying to do is ask, how do we get people to look at the light? Because
Yes,
that is scary to look at, because
it
what it
is.
means is it threatens your psychological makeup. And
Mm-hmm.
your body instinctively knows that if you massively change your viewpoint on things, your worldview, there's a whole physiological change that has to happen. Your body's always like working with what the mind tells it. Like if you say to your body, hey, we're going to enter a contest later today to see who can eat the most hot dogs, your body's
Hmm.
starting to already juice up for that. It's like, oh, we're going to be
Yeah.
taking in a lot of hot dogs.
Yep.
It's constantly trying to do what you're programming it with your mind to do. And so if you program your mind that, oh, there's nothing that can be done, then your body's like, gear down, we don't got to do anything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or if you're
Yeah.
gearing up to like, oh, we got a lot of work to do, then your body starts putting the chemicals out that it needs to do to make that happen.
I need to work on that for my fitness, man, because I'm telling you, if I could like make my brain, make my body, get more active and like eat better and all of that stuff, that would be super
Well,
amazing.
I'll give you my hint. I
Yeah.
try to tell this to everyone that I meet because I've made some incredible differences in my life through some
Yeah.
very small changes.
Okay.
And I remember it dated back to a couple particular books I read, but
Mm-hmm.
one of them was The 4 Hour Work Week, which was I'm
Mm.
blanking on that dude's name right now, but um, he explains this thing where if you create a habit, and this is also in a couple of the habit books I've read, Habits for Highly
Timothy
Effective
Ferris, I found.
People. What's that?
Timothy Ferris. I
There
just
you
looked
go,
him.
Ferris, right?
Yep.
And then some other people have brought this out too. If you do something every day for about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, it becomes a habit. And
Mm.
so, like what I did with push-ups, I wanted to start doing push-ups every day.
Oh, nice.
I started with 7, and 7 push-ups might be too many for someone who has a heavier body type, but I'm super skinny. 7 is easy for me, right?
Got
So
it.
you want to start out with something that's so easy you can't not do it. So someone
Mm.
might start out with just one squat, right? But you do that one squat every time it's triggered by something else you do in the day. For me, push-ups are like a first thing in the day. I get up, I do my Wim Hof breathing, and then I do 100 push-ups. I only got to 100 push-ups by starting off with 7, and I did
Wow.
7 consistently for 3 weeks. After you do that for 3 weeks, you get up and you can't not do push-ups. It becomes like it's hard to not do it. It's part of your habit now,
Damn,
right?
dude. So you're saying you do 100 push-ups a day, you said? Like 7 days of the week or
Yeah, every
close to
morning.
that?
Every once in a while I take a day off,
Yeah,
but
sure, sure.
but
But,
I do a
let
cold
me
dip
see.
now too. I have like a whole series of things I do, but it started off with just getting the habit started. Another good
That's
habit is like when you're
yeah.
brushing your teeth, do
Mhm.
squats. Um,
Oh, okay.
like
While you're
when they're
brushing your teeth.
triggered by other things you do, like if you have to go feed the dog or walk the dog every day, well, that's a good time right when you walk out the door, do 2 pull-ups on the banister or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
find a way to integrate something into your life and you do it and you make it so freaking easy that you have no excuse to not do it every day. And
Yeah.
then once it becomes a habit, then you start little by little increasing it to the level which you can maintain it.
That's awesome. That's pretty interesting. So
And
you
that's almost true too of like the emotional things. Like
Mhm.
you're talking about emotional talent intelligence, and to
Yep.
me that's like the biggest thing out there that people need to work on.
It's hard. It's
Honestly,
really
working
hard.
towards everyone freedom. If we can't get along, how are we going to do anything? We're not
100%.
going to do it alone. We're working against teams of people that have been working on this shit for generations.
With
We have to
many
be able to
resources.
work together,
Vast resources. Yep.
which
Yep.
means that we have to get our emotional intelligence at a level where we can work together with other human beings. and
100%.
and that's practice. That takes
Yep.
practice. That's getting on meetings with people. That's showing up when you said you were going to show up, making
Yep.
an appointment with somebody and then showing up,
Yep.
working together on a project and getting frustrated and working through that and doing it anyway because
Yeah,
you
and being
have.
honest there, right? Like having an honest dialogue in that space, like and being willing to do that and help make it safe and feel safe for each other.
Absolutely, man. The honesty to yourself is the
Yep.
key. If you can't
Mm,
be humble, I mean, you're just living in a dream, right? But
right.
here's what I was going to ask you. Like, because you've already done a lot of work with music, I can see that's helped you a lot on this process. Like, you already know how to get in front of the camera. You're not uncomfortable in front of the camera. But that expression, what I found in my life with my guitar and singing and stuff, is that has been a tool for me my whole life to deal with emotions. Have you found that too? Like,
Oh, hell
um,
yeah.
with the
Completely.
music? Tell people a little about your music and how you've integrated that in your life. I'm curious to hear a little bit about that.
I will. Before I do, I'll tell you the last design element of the project that I think is important, and it's
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
no,
stop
that's
your
okay.
process
No, no,
there.
no, no, no. It's all good. I'll get to that also. And by the way, I did the math. That means you're doing 36,400 push-ups a year, if you're
Right
doing
on.
100 a day. That's crazy. Congratulations, man. That's amazing. So I'll say it real quick. The last design element is do not tell people what to think or how to feel. Because that is another thing that I tend to see in this type of content. It's things like we should be scared. We need to do X. You have to do I, which funnily, like the irony of that is you're now actually in a way enslaving them. I know that might be a hard one to wrap the head around, but if you're telling somebody what to think or how to feel, even if it's unintentional, you're starting that same process again that will eventually lead back to slavery. And
Yeah,
so,
like now you're calling yourself the authority, right?
yes, yep,
And then people right away catch on to that. If they feel even for a
they
minute like you're
do.
talking down to them,
They
they're like,
do.
"Who are you to tell me?"
Yeah, dude,
Right?
and that's the instinct. That's the fucking intuition, bro.
Mhm.
Anyway, to answer your question about music, yes, 100%. It has helped me with all of this, and I'll tell you something. When I look back, because you can, the whole join the internet, one word. It's one word if you want to Google it. Join the internet, everybody. That whole catalog. If you look at the lyrics and things, I've been talking about this stuff for years, and I didn't even really know it.
It's
It just
prophetic.
was, coming out, yeah, like, 2014, there's a song I, wrote called, "Settled," and at the end of the song, there's a refrain that I repeat that says, "And everyone I know will open up their minds," and I just repeat that until the song ends, and when I go back now and read that, I was like, "Holy crap, how that must have just been, already in me because I don't write intentionally. Like, what I mean by that is I don't sit down and be like, "Ooh, now I wanna write a song about everybody's gonna be waking up." Like, I don't do that. I just end up, what comes out is, what comes out. So and that includes the music, and that includes, the lyrics. So, it's been interesting to me because I now look at it as that's been my subconscious, like, trying to talk to me, basically, subconscious trying to talk to the conscious because like I said, I don't think about it at all when I am writing. It's just what ends up coming out. Even when I collaborate with people, we tend to put demos together in like my bedroom, which I'm in right now. For example, like we'll put the music down and then I'll just get on the microphone and just sing whatever comes to mind. And then from that, I'll listen to it and okay, here I'm going like da 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 da. Oh, I think that kind of sounds like I'm saying, everyone I know will open up their mind. So that ends up being how it works out. So yes,
It's a very
100% that has
intuitive
been,
process, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and one
yeah,
of
yeah.
discovery where things just sort of come to you. It's not like you go seeking them necessarily, right?
And it's to the point where I don't even like really think I can take credit for writing, and I know that might sound silly, but it's the truth
I've heard other
because
musicians say that as well.
yeah, it's true because um I don't know if it was me, like I really don't. So it must have been,
Intergalactic
I
is I
guess,
think
but
that's what the Beastie Boys were talking about with intergalactic.
really,
Yeah, so I heard him in an interview one time, one of those guys saying how it's like, "We don't know where this stuff comes from, man. It's intergalactic. It just shows up, you know?"
that's awesome. I'll try to find that. I write down quotes and things like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Let me see. I'll make a note for myself. I'm always taking notes.
That's fantastic, and organization has been so big and key to doing, like, the work I do, for instance, like, trying to keep a podcast going, trying to create content. If you don't find a system of organization, it's definitely gonna your whole process is gonna grind to a halt. You get stuck. You're going looking for something and you can't find it. Doing all this work, it's amazing how much technological skills you have to acquire.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. That's where like I'm sure you know about Mark Passio's classes. I forgot what it's called,
Yeah, how
but
to become the
be
true
that true
media.
media
I was
seminars.
in the
Yeah.
very first one, and that was when I first got to meet
Oh, you did
Mark
it?
Passio and show him some of the work I was doing at the time, and
That's
that
cool.
was how I wound up getting on the One Great Work Network
That's
was
awesome.
through meeting him in his class.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from Mark. I mean, like I'm super like I'm not necessarily always a neat person, but when
Oh,
it
me
comes to my
too.
computer, my desktop is clear. And it was
Really.
partly because of Mark Passio's tutelage. He's just like, you don't want all that junk. It slows down your computer. Keep your
It's
files organized, keep your stuff clean. And he really kind of like teaches you like some very simple principle ways of doing things to keep your system working smoothly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've seen it and I've kind of been interested, but I'm pretty far advanced in like lots of technological
Yeah,
things.
I
It
could see
sounds
that.
like that's a part of it. So that's kind of kept me away. But maybe at some point there'll be like a next level up with people who maybe have like a little bit of programming
Advanced skills,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, lots of experience with, I don't know, editing video and um stuff like that, because I see it and it's like, yeah, that'd be cool, even if it's just a way of um meeting a group of like-minded people. That sounds like an interesting concept. So Mark, if you end up seeing this in any way, if you do something that's more like getting people together virtually, even if you charge for that, I would raise my hand. So I'll
The
just
other place I've met a lot of
put it
people
out there.
is through, Richard Grove's Autonomy,
Yeah, I heard about that yesterday. What
and
is
that's,
that?
something to look into. It's another route where there's a lot of freedom-minded folks that I've actually, my friend whose house I'm at now, we're working on a business plan together.
Nice.
I met him through the freedom community, through Autonomy. And
Okay.
like the podcast too, like I met you because
Mhm.
my content's out there. And so, and I'm kind of addressing the questions you're going through as you're thinking out your process of how can I create something that helps other people? And
Yeah.
I think that's super evolved and beautiful. I think people have to really come to a high level of awareness, and then to reach that level where you're ready to share it with others and you have the skills to do that. I think that's really commendable. And then what you have going for you that a lot of people don't is you've already bridged that gap of learning to use your intuition, like in music, for instance. And I think it's really hard to reach people with ideas of freedom and natural law, um,
Yeah.
through the logical brain. In some ways, it can't be done. So if you can bring
Yes,
things to
yes.
people in an artistic way, with some flavor of music, with some storyline, with some sort of artistic flavor, you have that much more chance of someone's mind being kind of open and interested and curious. In fact, that's how they do. If you look into mind control, it's all about
Oh,
um, toying with people's emotions, and all advertising and sales is appealing to your emotions. So even if we want to do a positive
yeah.
version of mind control or leading people in the right direction, we want to access people's right brain. We want to
Yeah, yeah,
use
yeah.
our music and our art to open these doors. And I think you're a prime candidate for that.
Yeah, and I don't get like shy or embarrassed about saying things like advertising is a useful tool. Like I actually do think it is. It just depends on the intention. Um so it's like the difference between manipulation and influence. When you manipulate someone, you're doing that for yourself. The other person doesn't have something to gain. If you're influencing, you're keeping others in mind as well and thinking about things like how can everyone win as much as possible. And in that space, I think it's okay to think about ourselves too. Like maybe that is I don't know, somewhat controversial to say, but I think thinking about ourselves is okay. Um at the expense of others is where it starts to be not okay. So that is where I think like um words like advertising or propaganda, etc. They don't scare me. Like in other words, I don't mind talking about them as a useful tool, because at the end of the day, I think it is unavoidable. So it then becomes more about how we're using these tools. Is it to just serve myself, or is it to serve everyone? To create freedom or to destroy it. I think that is what's going to um, make the difference between how a tool is used. It's just like natural law. Natural law is all about, yes, even though there is what's moral and immoral, it's really up to the individual at the end of the day to make the choice of how the trivium, and how their behaviors, thoughts, decisions, actions, etc., like whatever they are, you'll get one or the other, moral or immoral. So I think of it that way. Like it doesn't scare me, and I just mentioned that because you do hear people with different things. Like I've heard this, I've heard like a friend tell me like, oh, you just want to control people, and it's kind of like I go a little bit like, oh man. After all this, that's what you say. And I think part of it's because I do have a personality, I guess. I'm kind of a character, and I know that. And I know how these things can come across when you say them out loud to people. So I get
Well, and
it.
it's an ongoing process, right? Like,
Yeah,
I've
and it is.
screwed
Yeah.
up so
Yep.
many times with so many
Yep.
people that, there's a lot of things I used to do that I don't do anymore. Even my own kids is
Mhm.
a perfect example, for quite a few years there. It's like, oh, here goes dad again with his conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
don't bring it up in the way I used to because I learned those
Yes.
lessons. Like, especially like we said, if people feel like you're talking down to them, or you're
Right.
coming from like a holier than thou
Yep.
place, a much better way is kind of like Socratically asking people questions. People love to
Yes.
talk about what they think. And if you ask them questions and get them talking, then you can ask questions that are a little more directed. And you can kind of like, sometimes you can put somebody in a place where they can't answer their own questions. And that's better than you asking it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you'll see that happening. You know what? Let me. Do you mind if I were to share my screen and have my
Oh, absolutely. Feel
project
free.
open?
Yeah.
Just because you're touching on so many things right now that are part of the uh, project doc that I have. I don't know if I shared the project doc with you, but here, let me go desktop
Yeah, I'm
doc.
looking forward to checking that out. I love all the things you brought up, the points you brought up from your bullet list there.
Thank you.
Good
Let me
stuff.
see. You mentioned Socratic method. I have that in there, but that's not what I wanted to show. So here you go. Yeah, Socratic method, 100%, brother. I'd love to hear that. Ego and yin and yang. There it is, right? But this is what I wanted to shoot. I just saw it. Where is it? Oh, here we go. This is the thing that I in that scenario described when you ask them a question and like they try to work it out and they don't come to an answer. This is I call it they short circuit.
Mm.
Um and what it means is when they go back and forth between ideas, and when people short circuit, they come out of it with a reaction. So a lot of people get annoyed or shut off what just happened. So it's kind of like when you get a blue screen of death, and instead of troubleshooting the error, you just unplug the computer and plug it back in. So that's a concept that I ended up coming to.
I like what you said below that too. What if we enjoy short circuits like a sneeze?
Oh yeah,
Woo!
yeah,
Yeah, that was a good one.
yeah.
It's like
Because
kind of a buzz, huh?
yeah, if you're trying
Oh,
to
and a
find
short
the wave,
circuit there,
yeah, if you're trying to, yeah, you get it, you get it. Like you hear how I'm
huh?
kind of trying to find the waves to make these
Well,
types of
when you have
things.
these conversations with people, it happens so many times that either you get frustrated and you bang your head against the wall, or you find a way to start making it fun and
Yeah.
enjoy the process and see it as a challenge. Like, I look at it like Rubik's Cube. When somebody
Hmm.
brings up a point that I don't really know how to counter, then it's bouncing around my head for the next 3 weeks, and I make a podcast about it, and we talk about it in the Warriors, and me and Marvin talk about it, or me and
Yep.
Leslie talk about it, or
Yep.
until I get a way to answer that.
I love that you noticed that part because that's exactly the point of that. It's all about like helping make these things feel safe. Because you know what happens when people short circuit, um, if you make fun of them there, then you fucked up because you just shut them off now from you. Like that's
Hmm.
going to be a scar that is hard to
Now they're gonna
heal.
have to feel the need to defend against that,
Yeah,
like
yep.
self.
But
Yeah.
if you like use that opportunity to like I don't know, just say like give a hug, say like, hey, yeah, it's all good. These are the or like have fun with it. Like that's why I put that in there. Like, cause yeah, what if we did enjoy that like a sneeze? Like, oh shit, I just short circuited. That's crazy. But
Yo, that was a crazy
whoa,
short circuit right there. Well,
what was
and
that about?
I do actually quite a bit is I think back to myself before I realized certain things,
Mm,
and I try to get back in the mentality of
yeah,
like, well, for years I thought that, like I
yep,
didn't really understand that government was evil
right,
until I was like 20 something years old. I didn't like it. You know what I mean? But I didn't recognize really the aspect of it, how it has to do with morality in that way. And so, is it really someone that's stupid because they don't realize that? Like, I didn't realize that for 26 years or whatever it was.
right,
You know what I mean? It took me a minute, a long minute. So, we
yeah,
kind of got to give people the opportunity to learn things. And a lot of times, like after you have a conversation with somebody, it's not till like that night when they're laying in bed thinking about it, when they get a chance to really let it go through their sensors. So if you're too quick to jump to conclusions and push them, they don't get a chance to process. You got to
Yeah,
recognize that people need time to process and
they
integrate.
do. Yeah. Yeah, because they're gonna do that work themselves, and that's what I mean by, like, they're going to wake themselves up. They're going to come to realizations, and that is where I think that signal would be a stronger one if it's associated with critical thinking, self-awareness, and emotional intelligence. Like, those end up being the things I end up coming back to. And I'll tell you, I've looked at all kinds of different dynamics, like dynamics in the workspace, dynamics within a school system, um, obviously the societal dynamics like police and citizenry. And I've noticed that people will do what you tell them to. People will say sorry when there's nothing to apologize about. They didn't do actually anything wrong. People will get embarrassed about things that aren't actually embarrassing and are actually understandable. An accidental fart is always funny. I will say that is always funny if somebody just farts out of
But why
nowhere.
should you be embarrassed about it?
Yeah,
Well, I
exactly.
guess unless you ate 36,000 Twinkies, in which case you probably should be embarrassed about that.
Exactly. So, but maybe so that one to the side. No, I'm kidding, but and I think it ends up coming back to these things like at work, in workplaces. Like you'll see the authoritarian in the workplace who tells people what to do and who enjoys. Like you can see them enjoying um that they get to that they tell people what to do and people listen. Like you can just see that dynamic. It's pretty nowadays it's like disgusts me, but back in the day it would just be like, what's up with that? Like what's that's fuck that guy or whatever, that woman. But you just see it all over. And so as I look at different situations in our lives, those are the three things that I just keep coming out with. Why are we afraid to question even something like JFK, for example, 9/11, COVID, all of these things. And time and time again, I kept coming back to those three things: the critical thinking, the emotional intelligence, and the um, self-awareness. So that is what now takes me into, so that people can go through that process, like you said, have that opportunity to process things. I kind of just want to focus on elevating those three items as much as I can. And I'm still figuring out what exactly that means. Again, part of it is things like being on here and even just talking about it. I do have like more specific goals than that that I can end up talking about if you want. But I'm trying to figure out like what are the products of this project. Is it
Yeah,
video? Is it lessons? Is it um, uh, groups? Is it? It's probably going to be all of those things and more.
right. Definitely
But
could be. I
yeah.
think what I've found personally is that when you start creating content, whether it's writing or making a video or presentation, everybody kind of has their different ways of going about it, but
Mhm.
you have to kind of make a rough draft of something and screw it up a couple times before you really find out what it is that you want to create and what's going
Right.
to be the best way to do it. So I always try to encourage people, just get out there and start doing something.
Start doing it. Yeah.
And you can always delete that account and open a new one. And,
Hmm.
who cares, if you screwed up the first one or whatever. But the sooner
Yeah.
you get something going, the sooner it can build into something greater, and you can really realize like, oh, that's what it's missing
Hmm.
when you see it, right? And then when someone watches it and they go, you know what would make that better? And then you're like, oh yeah, let's bring that into it's kind of like that thing I was saying with exercise. It's
Oh
more
yeah.
about integrating
The habit.
something into your lifestyle than it is about one particular project, because a one-off project anybody could do, it's over and said and done. But folks like us that really care about natural law and freedom, this is like from here on until we get more freedom, we got this to work on. So it's like good to have sort of a long haul perspective on it and be like, I'm going to keep working on this, whatever. I'm going to just get something out there, and then I'm going to start fine tuning it and refining it until it really starts looking like the way I want it, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point, and
That's
that's
my theory.
exactly.
I'm not saying
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
I
right
think
theory.
you're right. I think you're right, which is why even though I can't specifically say right now, I'm gonna release this and this and this, I'm still already moving, and doing things like, asking you if I could be a part of this show today so I can at least talk about the approach because even if somebody ends up watching this and they like the thing that I'm mentioning, I don't know these ideas. Like they're not my ideas. It's like Mark Passio says, "There's nothing new under the sun." So I wouldn't lay claim to somebody wanting to now help others or themselves understand emotional intelligence in whatever way they want to, or learn about critical thinking or share that with others, or self awareness. Like, great. Like if you come out with products before me, that's perfect. Even better because I'm lazy. So,
Yeah.
the more that other people are helping, then the more time I get to use for things like, I don't know, making music or thinking. I think a lot.
I can
So
tell, and what's hard to realize is like you're brilliant. Your brilliance is a
thank you.
little different than my brilliance. And when I
Yeah.
hear you spell those things out and I look at your outline, I'm like, oh shit, that's a really neat way to put it. I love that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But it's hard for people to recognize that their own personal knowledge and skill is so valuable to other people because you already have it. You already know what you know. It's already
Yeah.
sitting in your brain. You're used to it. But for other people to hear that, it's going to come as like, boom. Oh, yeah. I like how he put that.
Yeah.
Your unique spin
Yeah. I
is
do. That's the
necessary and important. And I'm looking forward to seeing it out there, shared
thank
more.
you.
I'm glad to be part of your one of your premiere episodes on truth and freedom here. This is exciting to me to be part of this process. So
Yeah, I guess that kind of is what it is actually because I'm telling you, man, I've been so scared. I still am. For so long. Um, and that's it. That's just the truth. It's scary. Like it still is. Like there's times
and that
where
that honesty, man, that's what people need to hear too.
it's scary, dude. Like there's times where I'm just like, fuck, this is really overwhelming. Just because there's so much going on and it's constant, and there's billions of people in the world, so it's like a massive, massive scale. So I end up bouncing back from that, but there's times where it's just like overwhelming, like for real, really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And that like realization process, that matrix awakening to the matrix process that I think a lot of folks are going through, it's disarming, it's humiliating, it's hard process to go through, especially when people around us don't understand what we're going through when we're realizing these things. And so that's something Leslie and I have been talking about and we want to help people out with too, where we got to be there for people that are doing this waking up process. And that's
Mhm.
kind of those of us that have already realized things. It's our opportunity to be kind of mentors and teachers to other people that are coming to these realizations. And it's not like we're better or higher or anything like
Right.
that. It's not at all. We just happened to bump down the road that brought us to the truth. And we were
Yep.
curious enough to look. And other people will get curious too. So hey,
Yeah, and I
we're
oh,
we're at like an hour 20, so I usually like to keep the show like hour and a half or so. So
okay.
you got another good 10 minutes if you want to present something to people before we hang it up for today. And I'd
Actually,
love to have you back on in the future, so we don't got to get it all in on this one. But go ahead.
thanks, Chris. I wanted to ask you, like, how did you come to these topics? Like, what was your journey like? I'm sure it's in one of your episodes, and you talk about it a lot. So, but like, was there a pivotal moment, or was it
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
gradual? Yeah.
I got hit hard by September 11th.
Mm.
And the
Yeah.
day it happened, actually, my best friend just called me, my childhood friend. We've been friends since he was like 6 years old, and
Yep.
we still talk. But I was on the phone with him the day of September 11th. And I remember saying to him, dude, this must be like some kind of inside job or something because that
Wow.
doesn't look right to me.
Yeah.
I was doubtful from day one. And that was before I understood half of I didn't know any of this conspiratorial type stuff.
Yep.
I knew about like giants and space aliens. I loved stuff like that, but I hadn't
Mhm.
really looked into the worldwide cabal or the new world order. I didn't really get
Right.
that stuff
Yeah, that's
back
a
then.
good point. That's a good point.
So it took me like 10 years before I really started researching that. And I remember what happened specifically was I got an iPad. It's the second iPad they had out, iPad number 2. And after wasting my time with for 3 weeks on video games, I was like, what else can you do with this? I'm curious. Like it's like I got a crystal ball here. What do I want to ask it? And I
Yeah.
remember thinking about it for like 2 full days. Like, what do I want to ask my crystal ball? And I was like, I want to know what happened on 9/11.
Wow.
Like
No
I was
way.
like, I remember thinking, I people
Like, it
must
just
have,
came to mind just like that? Like,
yeah, like
that's,
I was
what
like,
I wanted to
people, I was like, that is like one of the biggest questions on my mind. I was like, people must have realized that was bullshit by now, and people must be
Mm.
raising a fuss because that was obviously bullshit. And sure enough, I went and started looking, and then that's when like architects and engineers for 9/11 truth was just booming. And I just from that I got into weather engineering and chemtrails devastated me. I spent like a year to 2 years staring at the sky, taking pictures, trying to talk to people about it. Like I
Yeah.
really didn't want to just draw quick conclusions. I really wanted to do my research and understand it because I couldn't get why people were so dismissive of the topic. I'm like,
Yep.
this is like a big deal, man. This matters. If we're getting poisoned from above all the time, every day, why would people be so dismissive about it? That's fucking
Yeah.
huge. And it
Right.
just blew my mind that people couldn't wrap their head around it. They couldn't even talk about it. And that
Yeah.
was almost more than knowing whether or not it was chemicals or not. The bigger deal was realizing that people didn't have the capacity to talk about it
To even at all,
or to
right?
even
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Yeah,
And so
yeah.
from those two things, 9/11 and weather engineering, I found all the podcasts. It mostly happened through podcasts. I started listening to all these podcasts, and then I
Mhm.
got into Mark Passio's work and Richard Grove and Larkin Rose, and
Yeah, yeah, yep.
then I got referred to all the people over time that have talked about anarchy or freedom,
Yep.
and I was super hungry. And then once I started doing all that, it was over. My first podcast was actually called The Scritch Show, and I was doing music stuff because I used to love making up music from
Used to love?
scratch. Making up music. I called it Scritch.
A
Me and
script?
my friend
Okay.
would just get our guitars out and start making up a song as we went. We would try to do as minimal planning and production as possible. And so I had all these old tracks and I used to play those and interview people. That was my first show back in eight
That's
years
awesome,
ago
man.
or something like that. But yeah.
You said, used to love. You don't love that anymore, or how did,
I do. I just it hasn't, I've kind of changed my focus in many ways, but
Gotcha.
actually love getting back into music. I was actually doing some rapping a couple weeks ago with
Oh,
my
really?
girlfriend's son. He's a rapper,
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
I was playing around with trying my hand at some rap, and so I still love making music. I'll never get rid of that, and I hope to get back into it. But right now, I put more of my time and energy into like graphics design and stuff for
Oh, cool.
presentations and truth content. But I want to start bringing the music back into it. I think that's important.
Yeah, and, did you mention in one of your episodes, like, I think you did that, you kind of changed the focus of the topics you talk about too a little bit, like you broadened, them, so to speak. Did I hear that in one
Yeah,
of
well,
the
I've
episodes?
definitely gone over more. I used to talk a lot. I try to concentrate on, like you're saying, some of the things in the world, like the chemtrails or the 9/11
Yeah,
topics. And I've realized over time that I want to be more about helping people with passion, purpose, why they're
right.
here, because it's really all about the self work. Like
Yep,
if most people are seeing, there's a billion shows out there that will tell you about the problems in the world.
that's true.
How many are actually helping you change yourself to be the person you want to be? So I've kind of found myself going more towards helping people learn how to create content, helping people learn how do you actually do the self work. It's one thing to say that,
Mm,
but how do you actually change yourself
that's a
in a
good
better
one.
way in the real world? How do we
That's a
actually
good one.
change our mindset? So getting into the actual details of how to self growth is the direction we're going.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to see, what comes out of, all of that for, you and all of us, man, because, I know there's like-minded people out there. I'm learning, like not exactly day by day, but maybe month by month, that there's more people around me than I knew about who are like-minded or ready to learn more about these types of things. Uh, COVID actually ended up being a catalyst for people, it's looking like, which part of me doesn't know how to feel about that, because part of me wonders if that's on purpose as some part of a bigger plan. And that's the interesting part about all this too, because at some point you do have to wonder a little bit, like, am I also paranoid? But I keep coming back to no. Um, but it's a big, complex world out there. So
A
I
little
know for
doubt is healthy, I like to say.
yeah,
You
that's
know,
true.
anyone tells you that you shouldn't doubt and that you should just believe, they're the ones that are trying to manipulate, you know?
Yeah, that's true too. I agree with
So
that.
it's good to have some healthy doubt and to keep ourselves in check. And I think that's really where having a community really helps out, because all by ourselves in a house with a crazy person, you start feeling crazy too. And
Yeah,
we're living in a world of crazy people. You know,
yep.
is that's the truth. People are nuts out there. They really
Everyone
want
is.
to. You know
Everyone.
what? I think of it like this: everything we do is like throwing a pebble into a pond of water. And
Mhm.
you know, when the pebble hits the water, the ripples go
It
out in
spreads
every
out.
direction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
But government, the idea of government and authority is like believing that you can throw out that pebble and make square ripples. You know,
Mm,
we can make square ripples. We can make everybody do things when in truth you can't. All you can do is create problems, and people are believing in these square ripples, you know, in a world of circle. You know, it's just it's imaginary world that we're living in, and it's totally corrupted with these false ideas. But because everybody's living them and thinks it's real, it's really hard to break that bubble, you know? And so
mhm.
what we have to do is just be like you were saying, super honest, super real, and not afraid. Or if we are afraid, we push through that fear and show how it's
Push through
done.
it.
Show how
Yep.
courage works, you know?
Oh, I like what you just said about I wanted to show you this website of I'll call him a friend. It's actually somebody I met through this community. I think you might have heard of him before. Do you know Afix? That's his screen name. Do you know
Oh, it sounds
Afix?
familiar. Yeah.
So Afix, so what happened is back in late 2022, have you heard of Unism? Do you know about Unism at all?
No.
If it's okay. If not, but I have a friend who runs this thing called Unism, and he knows a bunch of like people in this type of community. So I told him about my project, and he set up a meeting with folks. And so it was a good opportunity to just share my starting point and get ideas, kind of like here today, but it was just more people. And it's
Sure.
not a podcast. It was just like literally a meeting, a phone call kind of thing, a
Yeah.
hangout, I guess if you want to call it that. And he sent me, he sent me this site, Afix did. I sent it in the chat, Humanity's Alliance, and I'm wondering if you've ever read this. Because for me, it really is the best summary of what's happening that I've ever found. humanitiesalliance.com/original.html. Like it covers all of it. It covers the lies that we're being told. It covers what's the actual truth of what's happening, and then it goes into ideas of what to do next. And it boils down to like passing along bits of information to people so that they can absorb it. It has a specific name, but um, have you seen this before?
No, but I like it. This looks good. Here's the last line. Humanity needs people brave and wise enough to discern the truth and to engage where and how they are most needed. Where is the
Mm,
one or the many who will do this? Who will stand forth? Stop looking around. I am asking you. Humanity's
right.
window for potential victory is closing. Well,
Yep.
you know, I mean, I think the call's out there. I'll share that link with this episode too, and put it in the chat when we got the live stream going. But
Okay.
I think, yeah, I'm kind of about at that time with my time for today. Would you like to say any last things to the audience before we close up for today?
Yes, at the end of the Le Fin du Mal, the last line is "Vous êtes appel à la liberté," which I forgot what that means in English, but you are something freedom. You are m'appelle. What does that mean? Vous
Oh,
êtes.
well, je m'appelle is your name.
Yeah, so vous êtes
Je m'appelle.
appel à la
What is your
liberté.
name? That's what is.
So you are liberty itself or something, maybe? Ce monde sera libre. Your world will be free. Si vous pouvez voir votre propre. My accent is terrible. I'm telling you, I'm not a French speaker. I'm trying to learn it. Alors, tenez-vous debout. I'm getting these, so I'll probably put them side by side so I can make sure that I'm getting it right. But anyway, if you guys haven't read this book, shit, you can't find a copy. It's really hard. I've been looking for it for months. You can get a French version pretty easy on Amazon, but if you want to get an English copy, it's I kept going on eBay for like months, and finally one popped up, and I got one recently. So
Yeah, the
I was hoping to read the
Amazon,
last line of it, but
it's like
yeah,
$2,000 or something for a copy of the End of All Evil. But it's free PDF. You just type in the End of All Evil on the Google search and you'll
yeah,
find a free PDF. And there's like a lot of
yep.
people that have read it aloud. Actually, I did on the podcast at one point. If you look back, way back, endevil.life. But yeah, there's people that have done a nicer job with the audiobook than I have. So
Yeah, no, I have the audiobook copies too.
I think
Before we go,
essentially the answer is you, is what it's saying, right?
oh, that's fucking right. Yes, I think that's true.
You
That's
are
right.
the answer. That's essentially what we're telling folks, that
Yes.
the
Yep.
change has to happen within us on an individual basis.
It's true,
And,
man.
we can't imagine the physical world changing. It's not going to change if the mental world hasn't changed first. Like,
That's
you
right.
can't throw a rock if you don't first think, I'm going to throw a rock. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It just that's how things work. First, we got to figure it out on the mental realm.
Yep.
And I really appreciate your excitement and encouragement to other people out there to do that work, because it's rare and it's needed.
I'm happy to do it,
So,
man. I feel like I have to do it. So, it's simple as that.
well, you're a
Thank you,
friend
man. Thanks
of,
for having me on.
yeah, you're a friend of the End Evil podcast. I hope we can do more together. Maybe we could play some of your songs from time to time and
That'd be sweet.
have you on the show again. I'd love it.
I'd appreciate that. That'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll keep in touch. One thing I'll talk to you about offline is if anyone has ever considered reprinting this, because it's so rare that I would wonder if we can figure out a way to help make that happen so people can get a copy of it.
I've thought a lot
Anyway.
about that, and I think it
Oh,
would be great if anybody else who listens to the End Evil podcast, who's curious about getting involved in that, we could create a team and make it happen.
I'll
That's
send you a
something that'd
note
be
on that.
pretty hard for me to do on my own right now, but I want to make it happen and
I'll send you
make
a note
those.
on that. Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause,
maybe we could put together a little project team and start working on it as a group. That'd be fantastic.
yeah, I'll send you a note on that because it's a thought that came to mind because it's a really good book and it's so hard to find. Like you said, the electronic version is really easy to find, thankfully.
Yeah,
But
but it'd be
for
nice to
people
get
like,
it out there in print again.
yep, yep,
You know,
exactly. So thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it. This
awesome,
was super
Marvin.
fun.
Yeah,
I
I'll
look
be
forward to
checking
your
out. You
live.
guys check out Join the Internet. Go on YouTube, type in Join the Internet, and check out his awesome music. It's really
Thank you.
fun. It's great music. I was very impressed. So
Thank
thanks
you.
for sharing yourself with the world, and we'll be looking forward to seeing everything you come out with.
Thank you for receiving me. I appreciate it. Lots of
Right
fun today.
on.
Thanks so much. I look forward to the live stream. That'll be cool too.
By the way, some people go by like one syllable, share, two syllables, Oprah. Some people go by a real name. This motherfucker, Join the Internet is his name, and he's all the way from Santa Rosa. Give it up for him, everybody.
Actually, I'm from Delano. Right? I like returning to Bakersfield for Christmas or other holidays for a couple reasons. First of all, because it's only like once or twice a year, so that I have to subject myself to it. Two, my mama makes some really good lasagna, Isabel, right? So, and she makes pupusas at this time of year. And three, there is just so much trauma and pain everywhere in Bakersfield, and there are so many people who have like these huge chips on their shoulders and who are frustrated by the fact that they haven't achieved their dreams or goals, and that take that pain and frustration out on other people or even themselves, or escape it by, you know, doing meth or drinking Modelo's or getting a Nintendo Switch or yelling at their spouses or kicking their neighbor's dog, or, you know, shit that they had when they were 16 or 19, I think I was hearing. Or moving to the east side, you know, or stripping at Deja Vu, or talking shit about people who were able to get out of the city. And I think all of that is super cool. I love that. You also have wiener syndrome. I like wiener syndrome. I also really like that there are people here who tell everyone that they're going to move out of town in a few years once they get things in order. But they keep on not doing anything that would actually get them out of town. Oh man, I'm going to be out of here soon. Spends all their money on a PS3, not even the PS4. Gets a girlfriend of 1 week pregnant. Drops out of community college after 1 semester of taking a global studies class. I mean, you know what? Why would you want to get out of this town anyway? Everything you need is right here. Like Five Guys. I like Five Guys.
I got more friends.
Me too. Bakersfield has lots of trash fast food. And I like that. I mean, come on. You guys have a fucking rally. Woo! Checkers for those who are really in the know. Where else do you fucking find that? That is like underground fast food. We don't have that shit where I live, man. I'm living in Santa Barbara. We have healing crystals that cost $7 million. And Ellen DeGeneres. We have fucking Ellen DeGeneres.
Boo!
And satanic ritual sacrifices. We have
Hell Satan!
We have satanic ritual sacrifices for winter solstice of porky from Bakersfield. I also like the special brand of power tripping that I find in Bakersfield. You know, you might need a bouncer at like a unnamed local tiki bar downtown that I'm not going to name. It's called Tiki Co. That's right next to a scary-looking apartment building with weird red lights on it, you know, on the street that only has a letter like a K or a J. You know, or something, like, they don't even name it after a dead Indian like every other city in California. And I'm talking small-scale power tripping, like, even though there clearly isn't anyone inside the building, you can't get in. It's like, we're at capacity, you can't come in. And you're like, okay, well, how you doing? And they just stare at you like stone-faced, like you're the piece of shit, you know, you're not worth even talking to at all. And you're like, God damn, what's wrong with this bouncer? But then you remember, oh, Bakersfield. And I mean, we should trip out on power, man. Like, we should take advantage of every little bit of power we have, to be honest with you, especially if it helps avoid the pain of actually confronting yourself, you know, realizing that the path towards self-improvement starts with you. Ew! Fuck that. What is this, the Lion King? You know what I mean? Hell no. Give me some fucking beers so I can black out and tell my great-grandpa, who I haven't seen in 2 years, who I want to just fucking punch in the face to go fuck himself after he asked me about my job, and then the next day it's just silence at Christmas breakfast. That's what I want. That is what I want. So I've been watching a show called Squid Games. Have you guys seen it? Me like Squid Games. And by the way, if you call me and tell me that it's Squid Games, fuck you. Swear to fucking God, do not correct me on that one. But no, I do always have a hard time in small towns, and man, make me feel like such is not TBH. But golly, can't we lift each other up out here, you know? I am from Bakersfield, by the way, so if you can't tell. And I live in a big city now, so I know the pain of being next to a big city and being treated like the retarded little brother. Like, I know that pain, I do. Sorry, my little brother. And so, end of day, you know, the funny thing about small towns too is we really talk shit on the other small towns. We'll be like, fuck Delano! Fresno? Ew! Like, bro, your family lives there. Like, what the fuck? My mama lives there. No, just kidding. So anyway, how are y'all, by the way?
You're doing great, Marv. Hell, Satan.
How are those Sidewinder fries? I haven't tried them yet. Oh, yikes. Are they that bad? I asked how the Sidewinder fries are. They were like, oh, God. How's the wiener schnitzel? Pretty fucking nice, right? Anyway, y'all, that's the light. That means I have 30 seconds, so I'm just gonna plug my Instagram. Join the internet, one word. Join the internet, one word on Instagram. Thank you so much, you guys. Merry Christmas, y'all.
I love you.